the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Billy Petersen. Billy is a student in our Executive MBA Class of 2023, and he is also a doctor at UVA Health. Billy and I recently connected to talk more about his MBA journey. He shares more about his professional background, how he decided to pursue an MBA, what led him to Darden, what he's gotten out of the experience thus far, and how he and his family have navigated this first year in the Executive MBA program. If you have questions about time management strategies, how students fit this program into a very busy and full life, this conversation is essential listening. So without further ado, here is my interview with Billy Petersen. Billy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Brett. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's great to have you here. Man, it is flying by for your class. What are y'all, almost a year into the program? How does this happen, Billy?
I don't know. It is flying. We have our mid-program celebration next month, which is just kind of mind-blowing, but it's going fast, and I think we're all really enjoying it. All
right. Well, how are you doing, first and foremost?
Oh, thanks for asking. I'm doing well. Thankful it's spring, it's May, and has some nice weather. Outdoor activities. That's been really fun. And I've had a little bit of a break from school actually since our last exam period. And so it's been a nice breather, but getting ramped up for next week. But yeah, I'm doing great overall. Thank you. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, the exam periods, we get a lot of questions from prospective students about the exam periods, interestingly enough. I think sometimes people hear that word exam and, well, their brain goes in all kinds of stressful directions. But in my experience, working with Executive MBA students, it can actually be a little bit of a break depending on how you choose to manage your time during that period.
That's right. I think that's true. We have a lot of flexibility, which is nice. The honor code here enables us to be able to take exams on our own time. And you sort of have the ability to schedule that week as you want. And it's typically 3 exams in the course of 7 or 8 days time. And so I think most of us set aside a day or two to kind of review everything and then just schedule out a couple of days to actually take the tests. But you can sort of just focus on preparing for the tests and taking them. There's no classes that week and no new reading. And so I think it does feel sort of like a break from the typical routine of class. That's right.
Yeah. And we're both in Charlottesville, interestingly enough, at least this week as we're recording this podcast. It's early May, as you noted. I'm here, Darden grounds, for the second leadership residency with our Executive MBA Class of 2022, which is an incredible week of celebration, all kinds of incredible classes, lots of socializing for the students, just as it should be. It's a great opportunity to look back on all you've done over the past 20 months or so. And this is also a time, Billy, where it's probably no surprise. We hear a ton about life changes and career and new jobs and moving to this place. And so this is probably one of my favorite weeks. But I love that midpoint celebration, too, because I think people can start to see the end. They can start to see it out on the horizon. And that's exciting, too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's right. It's an exciting time, to sort of transition into the second year of the program. And I look forward to our LR2, our leadership residency too. And gosh, just a few months later. So yeah, it's exciting.
Well, tell us a little bit more about you. Who are you? What's your background?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Again, Billy Petersen's my name, and I'm married. I have 3 kids. They're 4, 6, and 8 years old, and got a puppy at home as well. So family life, home life is a lot of fun. I'm a physician. I work at UVA Hospital, and I'm in Pediatric Hematology-Oncologist, so I take care of kids, blood disorders and cancers. And then I also have an administrative role. I'm an Associate Chief Medical Officer here at the hospital, and so I kind of split my time in those 2 realms. But so I'm one of the, I think, 6 physicians in our class, and learning a ton in this program that I'm already using, and especially in the administrative side of my job. So And I'm also a UVA undergrad, graduate. So I'm proud to be back in school here. So and I live here, of course. So yeah, lots of fun.
When you graduate from Darden, will that be a triple who experience?
It's a great question, Brett. I believe it'll be a double who because I did undergrad here. I left for all the rest of my kind of school and training. And so then it'll be my second school experience, even though I work here. I'm not sure if that counts toward the who criteria, but I believe that only the schooling does. So I think I'm a double who, but I can research that and get back to you.
Yeah, I'll have to look in our handbook. It's somewhere around here. I just have to check the bylaws. Really, I think that's probably what we're talking about, Billy.
We should
some fine print. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, how did you get interested in pursuing an MBA? Some of our listeners, they know we've had physicians previously here on the podcast, so it's not a totally unheard of thing for people, medical profession, to come do a program, Executive MBA program. But everybody's story is just a little bit different. So how did you get interested in pursuing an MBA?
Sure. If you would ask my 5 years ago self if I would ever go to business school, I would have thought no. I wouldn't have had it wasn't on my radar. And I think over the last few years, as I've gotten more and more into the administrative side of healthcare and sort of hospital leadership, I've really enjoyed it a lot. And a couple mentors of mine here had suggested, hey, you should really think about this. And at first I thought, well, that doesn't seem like something that I would be good at or that would necessarily help me. But pretty quickly I realized, no, actually, that would help me a ton in this, especially in my kind of leadership role, administrative role. And so, the more I thought about it, the more I realized this would be such a good thing for me, for my career path. And so it certainly played out to be that way. I'm already using a lot of what I'm learning even already in school. So yeah, I think that's how it came about. I just was increasing in my administrative and leadership roles in the hospital and realizing that I was sort of hitting a ceiling on my abilities, my skills and my experience. I was seeing a need for more understanding, especially the financial side of healthcare, but even just in my leadership training. And I identified a lot of areas that I could certainly do more had I had the knowledge and training. So yeah, it became more and more appealing, and I'm certainly so thankful that I'm doing it.
It's an interesting thing because when I've talked to doctors who are moving into these kinds of administrative roles, I think the thing that they come up against is their previous education didn't really touch on a lot of the things that they're being asked to do. And so they feel these gaps and what to do now. Am I supposed to learn everything the hard way out here? So how did you decide that school, school is how I'm going to be able to kind of build this skill set?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think largely through speaking with a mentor of mine who's also a pediatric physician who also did the Darden MBA, Executive MBA, really understanding more and more of how this experience would equip me, how this education would equip me to do the things I want to do with my career. And I'm not even sure exactly what that is, but I know that the skills that I'm learning and will learn in this program and the knowledge base that I'm sort of gaining will be very broadly applicable and will absolutely, set me up for more success in sort of in these leadership roles. And so, I think it was just through really looking into it, really understanding what is an MBA? What would I learn in that sort of program? I think I came to realize, this is actually really great, and I would really benefit from this.
One of the other things, we typically will have probably somewhere between 3 to 5 or 6 doctors in each Executive MBA class. We'll note the class that's about to graduate this year, the class of 2022, we ended up with double digits doctors, like 12, 13 or so doctors, a really atypical class in that way, but we've always had doctors in our program. And I think one of the decisions for many doctors considering an MBA is to do something more general. And Darden's obviously a general management program, and so you're going to get that broad foundation in business. There are electives. The other opportunity is to potentially do something that has a very strong healthcare focus and is really kind of slanted in that direction. Did you consider doing a healthcare MBA or something that had more of that sort of express healthcare orientation?
Yeah, it's a great question. I thought about it. I was never very serious about a healthcare focused degree, mainly because of what you said. I felt the value in having a broader foundation, maybe more general foundation, and just exposure to so many different industries, and being surrounded by classmates and peers who come from all different backgrounds. I felt that would be really valuable, and it's certainly it's certainly playing out to be that way. I mean, I think I'm learning so much more than I otherwise would in a healthcare focused degree. Now, of course, there's value in doing a healthcare focused degree for someone who wants to, is certain they want to stay in hospital leadership or something like that, for their career, which I expect that I will. But I just think there's a lot of value in the foundation that you mentioned, and just sort of a general management foundation. I'm being challenged by so many smart people from so many different backgrounds, and learning so much from them, and obviously from the program itself. So that I thought about it. I never actually really seriously considered it. This was sort of, to me, the best path for me.
The other thing that I've heard pretty consistently from the doctors in our program, something along the lines of the increased complexity of leading, managing a healthcare organization, that it's just a really challenging business right now. And there's a lot of change, and I think there's some dysfunction. People are trying to figure out how to solve some of these problems. It feels like healthcare has been in the public discourse for a very long time, and certainly accelerated after the Affordable Care Act, and feels like we've been talking about it ever since. And so does that resonate with you, this idea that healthcare, the delivery of healthcare is very complicated right now?
Oh, absolutely. That is a fact. I mean, it is. I've heard people say it's the most complicated of all the industries. It is very complicated. You mentioned a lot of the factors. We talk about in this country, the healthcare. Health insurance has been obviously a very hot button topic for years, and really longer. That really complicates the way we provide care. We spend a lot of money on our care here, and there's all kinds of efforts to try to reduce the costs. And it's very complicated. And I'm already, just back to the training I'm getting, I'm already feeling more equipped to be in those conversations with our sort of senior leaders, just as they're navigating some of these waters. On behalf of our institution, I can really appreciate on a much deeper level, that these challenges, and start to think about how to approach them.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Particularly, one of the things that's really compelling for executive MBA students is this: you're learning things in class, you're going back to work, you're applying those things that you learn, or your perspective on the work that you're doing, the problems that you're seeing in your workplace, or the opportunities there. Your perspective and your approach to those things is changing in real time.
Absolutely. Oh, it's absolutely true. I mean, it's happened several times now that we have an assignment or something in class that I'm able to directly use an experience that I'm either going through or have just gone through at work, and also kind of in real time here, just thinking about, gosh, we just talked about this type of thing in class, and I'm going to approach it, a little differently because of what I just learned, last week or something. That happens regularly. So yes, it is helping to shape and shift my perspective, in real time.
All right. So you come to Darden, and you're a business school student, a little different than being a medical student. What was it like to be in a business school classroom and navigating those first few quarters in the program?
Yeah, it was different. The environment is is really great, right? So you have this room full of people that are all eager to learn, eager to get to know each other, eager to make friends. And I think you all and the leadership of the school really helped to set the tone such that it's a very welcoming and it's an environment that's very conducive to learning. And so, yes, I was nervous coming in. First of all, just being back in the classroom. It had been a long time since I took a class, but especially a business business classroom. That was very. It felt very different coming in, but very quickly felt at home. Felt welcome. Felt like I was, a part of the group. And yeah, I think that has to do a lot with just the way it's set up and just the personality of the class. I really thankful for that.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things about the program is that it's relatively small, 135 or so students per class. It has that kind of tight-knit feel to it. You very quickly get to know everybody. Certainly during that first week, people ask us all the time, what's LR1 all about? What are you doing in LR1? And I share that one of the key goals of that week is to try to help students make as many connections as possible during that first week of school. And it just rolls from there, right? Quarter one, quarter two. And of course, everybody's new to this experience. Nobody's done graduate business school education. MBA is new. A lot of the subject matter is unfamiliar to many of our students. Right. And so that helps build connection too.
Right. Absolutely. No, that's exactly how it played out. I think for all of us, we so much excitement starting the year and having a week in person to kick it all off was really great. And that's right. I mean, those friendships just kind of hit the ground running from the beginning. So yeah, that's absolutely true.
Well, Billy, undoubtedly listening to this particular conversation right now, I'm certain have some parents, people who are thinking about doing a program, balancing, juggling, whatever the right verb is here, work, life, school, and family commitments. You mentioned you got young kids, 4, 6, and 8. You got a puppy. You got a lot on your plate. So tell us a little bit more about your family's journey here as you navigated this first year of the program. How have you approached this? And maybe if we can go even back further, in the summer, as you were preparing to embark upon this journey, how did you set the expectation? What kind of conversations were you having?
Yeah, great questions, Brett. I mean, it started with a conversation with my wife, of course. Are we crazy to think about doing this? And she like always was super supportive and really encouraged me to consider it, knowing that it was going to add to the chaos a bit. Life is pretty busy right now, as you mentioned, and so, but no, so thankful for that. And and talking with my kids was interesting. So my oldest is in second grade, and next oldest is in kindergarten. So they're just sort of new to school, and so this concept of dad also being in school, dad doing homework too, just like us. It actually has been really neat to be able to sort of teach them. It is such a privilege to learn. I mean, I think we too often take that for granted, but it's been fun to be able to tell them, yes, I've chosen to go back to school. I've chosen to take tests and do homework and learn. And that's been really fun for them to sort of buy into that and be excited that we're doing it together. Yeah, I think that was a big part of it too, just to sort of explain, the value of education and learning. It's such a gift, and that's how I really feel. And then so getting kind of into the program, it took a while to figure out, when am I going to get the work done? And there's some adjustment with my work schedule, trying to make sure there's time in the week to do all the things I need to do, attend the classes, Tuesday, Thursday nights, virtually. I've gotten in the habit of just waking up early every morning. I get up before everybody else and get an hour and a half in, so I'm not bothering anybody. I'm not taking away from my family time. So we've gotten in a pretty good rhythm, I think. So far so good. I again, probably mostly thankful, thanks to my wife and her support and taking on extra burden. But no, it's gone well, and I think it's certainly doable. I think the program gives enough flexibility, and everybody's got a busy life. Everybody's working. Not everybody has kids, but everybody's working and busy, and so there's the program is set up in such a way that you can make it work, and that's been my experience so far.
I love your points about your conversations with your children. One of the things that I find so funny, no matter how many times I hear these kinds of stories, is when students will talk with their young kids who maybe in school, second, third grade, that kind of age, and they're like, all right, well, I'm going to school too, and I've got this MBA program. And the kids' reaction's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm in school. I know about that. Yeah, right. You don't have to tell me. Like, it's just like, right. It's this incredible like moment where they're like, yeah, you and everybody else I know doing school.
Exactly. Yeah. That is funny. Yeah. It's sort of like we're peers again. And that school is just part of life to them. And in fact, it stands out that my wife is the only one in the house that's not in school. They bring that up from time to time. Is mom going to go to school too? And we say, maybe so. Maybe she'll do this next. But it is funny.
So I appreciate your point about how you found time in your day. And I want to talk a little bit more about this because we get a lot of questions from prospective students about the time commitment during the week, and trying to say, on average, what we hear from students is it's probably something like 15 or so hours per week. And that's inclusive of team meetings and maybe career sessions, extracurricular stuff, as well as the online classes and case reading. And, for some people in some quarters, maybe a little bit more than that, maybe a little bit less than that, depending on the classes you're taking. But there's no one right way to do this. And everybody I talk to on the podcast has a slightly different approach. How did you hit on, mornings as being a good time for you?
Yeah, good question. I think that, to me, it was one way to get some of this work done at home without bothering my family or taking away from my family time. So getting up early, house is quiet, and I can be productive and not, be doing that while my kids want to play or we're eating dinner or something. I'm choosing the time when they're all asleep, and so that that's why that was appealing. And then I've kind of worked on my schedule at work, the parts of it that are flexible. The patient care part is less easy to adjust, but the administrative part, I can kind of set meetings as I want largely. And so I've tried to protect, Monday afternoons as a time when I don't set up meetings, and I have a opening in my schedule where I can try to get some extra schoolwork done towards the end of that workday. And that doesn't work every week, but a lot of weeks it does. And then certain weeks there's Thursday afternoons where I kind of cleared meetings off my calendar. And so, I have to still get my work done, and so I get that. Sometimes that shifts into the evening or in the mornings, or I stay a little later sometimes. But right, it's important, to be successful. You have to spend time. You have to spend time learning. You have to be prepared for class. You have to, learn the material, of course. And so that just takes time. It takes hours. And so you have to just kind of find those hours in your week. A lot of my classmates spend that time on the weekends, and at night, so there's lots of different ways to do it. But right, that's kind of how I landed largely.
Yeah, this point about found time and looking for opportunities in your schedule, I've heard all kinds of different strategies around that. I mean, 30 minutes here, an hour there, like adding all this up I think sometimes when people think about schoolwork, they might think about 10 hours of uninterrupted time or something like that. And you might be the occasional student who is managing their time in that way, just a Saturday where they really hunker down with everything, for example. But more often, I tend to hear like this kind of like, I wake up early, or I stay up late, or, I have this block of time kind of carved out, and that's my window. I need to get as much done as I can. That sounds like that resonates with you.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I think the program lends itself to that, because you have usually about 3 classes at a time. And for each class, you have the next class to prepare for. And that's an hour or two, and so you can find windows to get those done in sort of pieces instead of needing to do it all at once. But yeah, you're right. Some people do. Some people set aside every Saturday or something, several hours in a row. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but I agree with you. It's probably most common that we're finding an hour or two here and there to get the studying and the preparation done.
The other thing I wrestle with as an admissions officer, particularly around this conversation, and I'm curious to hear your reaction to this, Billy. I think it's one thing for us as an admissions team to describe the program to you and the nature of the time commitment, and to say, oh, we think it's typically, in our experience, we find it to be around 15 hours or so per week for most students. I think everybody's lived experience of that is very different. It's it's unique. It's individual. What's your reaction to that? Do you feel like it's actually possible to describe to someone exactly what it would be like for them? I struggle with this a lot, because I think until you're in it, it's hard to really understand it.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it is hard to explain. I think, everybody said, and I know several people that have done the Executive MBA, talked to you a lot about it, Brett. I remember as we were getting in the application process, and all the facts were out there. I mean, I knew those numbers, but you don't quite understand the impact on your life until you're doing it. And 15 hours in my head was different from the way 15 hours plays out, today. And actually it plays out differently today than it did 2 months ago, 3 months ago, because you kind of tweak as you go and settle into the program. But no, I think you're right. It's really, really hard to explain, to really prepare somebody for what it's going to be like until you're in it. I think that, it's important to make sure people know, yeah, that's about the time commitment, and it is doable. Even if you have a busy job, it is doable. You might not feel like you have 15 free hours on the week, but you'll find it. It's there. It'll take some adjusting, but it's there. I think that's important that people understand, because I remember coming into the program thinking, where in the world am I going to find 15 hours? And you just do because you have to. It's just part of how it all works. But yeah, everybody has that same experience. I think you just kind of find your way and you get it done, and it just works.
Yeah, that last point is one that we try to share with prospective students. And bear with me here, there's a little bit of psychology, but and it's dangerous for an English major to do this even on a podcast. But nevertheless, for really motivated, driven people, the kinds of people looking at executive MBA programs, it can be hard to accept not having everything just so and buttoned up in a plan for everything. And how am I going to do this? This idea like it's just going to work. You got to trust that you're going to keep moving forward, because that's what I've seen with the program, that people start down this path and they find a way. But that may not be the most comfortable thought for people as they embark upon this journey. Any reaction to that?
No, it's a great point. And, people who would be interested in pursuing an executive MBA tend to be people that have, done well in school and work in the past, and are more on the perfectionist side of things. And so, probably it's uncomfortable to, sort of step into something with so much unknown. I can relate to that. That's how I felt. I think that's right. And I think, I think through talking with people that are doing it or have done it, talking with you and the rest of the admissions folks, I think you can get there, and it's less unknown, but it's still going to be a leap of faith a bit to say, yeah, I can do this. And I trust that we'll figure it out. So I think that's right. And honestly, Brett, that's been part of the experience for me that has been so valuable has been those sorts of personal challenges, right? Starting something that I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to play out, not exactly sure how I was going to do and how successful I would be. Um, and then, talk about the case method, which we may talk about more later, because I know people have a lot of questions about that. Being in a classroom, preparing for a case and knowing that I'm going to potentially be called on or need to speak about this and wondering if I'll say the right thing. I mean, that kind of thing is uncomfortable for a lot of us. But goodness, it's so good for us to put ourselves in those situations and to be challenged. And I have personally grown a lot through this experience. Doing something new and different, putting myself out there a bit. I mean, I've really been personally challenged and have grown in, I think, some really meaningful ways, just through that sort of stepping into the unknown a bit. So I guess there's some psychology back at you, Brett. I mean, I think I really feel like that's true.
Well, you make a good point. I mean, where does growth come from, right? Mm-hmm. This is a question that we sometimes talk around or ask related questions to. I mean, growth comes from pushing ourselves and getting outside of those comfort areas. We just continue to do things that are natural to you, easier for you, more comfortable for you. Are you really going to transform? That's a good question. So much of what I think this program is about transformational growth, and that only happens in that kind of discomfort.
Mm. I like that a lot, and I think that's true. There, so Jim Dietert, I took his class Defining Moments just last quarter. It was awesome. It was one of the highlights of my experience so far. But we read his book, and one of the quotes was, "Fear isn't a sign that you shouldn't do something, or it's a sign that the stage is set. Like it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to learn and grow and become better. And so I really love that. I think that's really true.
Well, Billy, before we talk about the case method, and I want to talk about that a little bit, because you're right, we do get a lot of prospective student questions about this learning experience. I want to ask one more question about this time management sort of family experience. One of the reasons why we encourage students to have not just conversations before they start the program, but ongoing conversations is what we were talking about just a few minutes ago, the idea that it's really very difficult to perfectly prepare everybody in your life for what this is going to look like. And it's not until you get into it that you start to get a sense. And so therefore, the necessity to check in, to have regular conversations, to, every week, maybe even every day, like, what's going on? What do we have? This is what I have coming up in school. That's one of the reasons why we encourage people to take that approach. Has that been how you, as your family, has worked through this?
It is. My wife and I always, we even before this, we're in the habit of every Sunday looking ahead at the week. What's the week going to be like? Are there days I have early meetings or late days or whatever to plan? And that's even more important now, because there are, there's school activities, there's classes, there's team meetings. And so we have to be even more careful about that, just making sure she knows kind of, what I have going on for school each week. So yeah, I do think so. And we check in, regularly. Hey, you doing okay? Or, and of course the weekends I'm away, especially when I go up to Roslyn for school. There's a little extra burden on my wife, obviously taking care of the kids, and but it's again, like, very supportive, and it's gone well. But I do think you're right. There's value in ongoing kind of checking in and making sure how we're doing this is working, because again, like we said before, there's flexibility. You can adjust and change the approach as you go, and I think we've certainly done a bit of that as we've kind of settled in.
All right, well, let's talk about the case method. I imagine this was a new kind of learning for you. It always seems like, even for people who may have done some kind of Socratic education, business school kinds of problems you're looking at, the nature of the environment, graduate level education, there's newness for everybody in the room. So what was it like to find yourself in a Darden classroom in a case discussion?
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful way to learn, and it's very different from how I naturally approached school in the past. I would do most of my learning after the class. I'd show up mostly unprepared, get fed the information by the teacher, and then at some point later, review it and make sure I understood it well enough for the test, right? With the case method, you're presented with a case in advance of the class, and the expectation is you're going to be prepared to discuss, that case in class, not only the details of the case, but also what do you think about it, and how would you approach this if you were the, sort of the main character. And it's often tied to readings, these technical notes that help explain, some of the information, how do you approach, a given scenario. And so it flips it around for a lot of us, where it's like, oh, we do a lot of the learning up front, a lot of learning before you even walk into the classroom. So that when you walk into the classroom, this professor who's so gifted at sort of leading the discussion can then say, okay, well, what do we learn here, and what do we think about this? Everybody's sort of on the same footing for the most part. You can jump right in and really get into the kind of the important stuff, the meat of the case, way differently than you ever could if you just showed up and started a conversation fresh in the room. So it's certainly different than anything I've really done before, but it is. Wow. I mean, the learning is just a completely different level. The amount of studying I need to do for the tests is a lot less than it used to be, right? Because I just understand the stuff a lot better, having, studied it before the class and then talk about it during the class and with my learning team, right? So, it's a very, it's an effective learning style for sure. And yeah, it's been really enjoyable as well. Really, really, I'm a fan.
Yeah, there's something about having that story around the information, I think, for students. You think about how humans, this is, again, this armchair, like, I don't know, evolutionary psychology, like how our brains work, they're hardwired for stories. And the case method is, well, it's narrative, it's story driven.
Right. Yeah, and when I think about what I've learned, I can tie the concepts to the people we read about in the cases, the scenarios we encounter in the case, because it just brings the concepts to life. Absolutely, you're right. The story aspect of it brings those concepts to life, and it makes it just much more real and applicable, I think. So yeah, that's a great way to say it. There's a story, and then there's also this information, and you tie them together, and it sort of makes it more memorable and more accessible. And yeah, absolutely, that's a good point.
How's your learning team been? This is something we sometimes hear from students who come on the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Learning team's been amazing. Yeah, we're learning team 5. There's 6 of us, and we all hit it off right away. We met obviously during LR1, and yeah, it's been I would say it's been one of the highlights of my time in school so far, is those relationships and the interactions we've had, helping each other, learn the material, but also just, becoming friends and supporting each other through some hard times. Actually, we've each, been through, different things in our lives over the last several months, and we've sort of been there for each other in a lot of those ways. And also just, we just like being together. Really, each of the Roslyn weekends, we make a point to go out for a meal together. And it's usually the highlight of the weekend. We just get along great, and it's a really neat way to help us learn. Right, you have a dedicated group that you can review material with. We meet typically once a week, and it really helps to learn and just to make it more enjoyable. I really have enjoyed that.
In those once a week meetings, I assume virtual Zoom calls, right, that sort of thing in the evening?
Yeah. The way we're doing it is a Monday evening kind of Zoom call. We chose 8 p.m. and it's usually an hour, sometimes hour and a half. And what we do is go over the the material for the classes for that week. It's usually a Tuesday, Thursday class. So we talk about, each one in turn. And then the weeks where we're leading up to an on-grounds weekend, we get into the material for those classes. So it's typically a Monday evening. We just kind of chose that because it was in advance of the Tuesday, Thursday classes mainly.
All right. Well, it's again one of those things that you hear lots of different approaches. We get a lot of questions about how the learning teams work together. We say, well, typical, you have meetings at work, right, with people who might be located all over. That's the case for our executive MBA students. So typically meeting virtually, but making some time when they're together during the weekend residencies to catch up. It's cool to hear about y'all going out to eat a meal together, maybe exploring DC a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. One of our team members lives in DC and has quite an elaborate Google Doc with all the best restaurants, and we've kind of ticked them off one by one. It's been really, really fun.
I love that. You got some of these places you got to get a reservation well in advance. That sounds like a very organized and good person to know.
It absolutely is. Yes. Yeah. She's probably our most valuable player in our learning team for that reason.
All right. Well, Billy, you're here approaching the midpoint of the program. What are you looking forward to as you kind of round into the second year?
I am, it's really interesting as I think about this program, getting to the halfway point and sort of, like you said, seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm sort of wanting to make sure I, get the most out of it. I mean, it is such a gift to be surrounded by these people and learning these things that I have a feeling when it's over, I'm gonna really miss it. And so I really want to kind of make the most of it, learn everything I can, get the most out of these relationships, because it's just a special season in life. I really, really believe that. So, looking forward to, just sort of the ongoing relationship building and learning that we're doing. I think specifically, I'm excited to get into more of our elective, portion of our curriculum. We've done a little bit of that to this point, but I think we get to do a lot more of that as we go the next few quarters. And so that's going to be really fun. I've heard a lot of great things about the electives that are offered. And so getting into some of the stuff that I'm particularly interested in is going to be really fun. I'm excited. It's just, it's just been a really fun process so far. And it sort of keeps getting better as we kind of settle deeper and deeper into it.
Well, your point about, and you were talking about the conversations you've had within your family about being in school, about this being a privilege. And, one of the things that I thought about, and I came up in a conversation with one of our executive MBA students, and actually executive MBA faculty member brought it up too in a call we had with the 2024s who were going to start this August. He was saying, like, school can be viewed as a break from everything that you have going on. Like, you can approach this with joy and excitement. You don't have to look at this like, oh, homework and exams and this whole kind of thing. I mean, admittedly, sometimes school experiences have some baggage for us from prior educational experiences. But I thought it was such a good point, like flips the whole thing around, because like you're in an MBA program, you get to carve out dedicated time from your life to be in a room full of smart, interesting people and learn. Like, how great is that?
It's really true. I really believe that. I mean, I feel that way. That's right. It truly is a gift. It's a really special season in life to get to, right. I mean, you have to devote all these hours per week, right, to learning this stuff. And what are you doing? You're sitting down and reading about, all this stuff that's really, really important and really interesting. I totally agree with you. I think that is the right way to look at it. Of course, there's stress, right? I mean, the exams, you got to make sure you're ready for them. And, there's a lot to read and that stuff. I mean, that is true. But I mostly just feel grateful for the experience. I mean, I'm very, just very thankful. And so I think that's really important. I really do. I think people should know that the process is really enjoyable. It's not just something to like get through so that you can, in the end, have the degree and have the knowledge and have the skills. It's actually, a really fun journey. And so, I think that's a great point, Brett.
All right, Billy. Well, we asked the same last question of all of our podcast guests. Now, I know there's been a lot of advice dispensed here thus far in our conversation. So it can sometimes be a little bit challenging to think of a specific word of advice, some counsel to share with our prospective student listeners. But nevertheless, if you were to offer our listeners considering the Darden Executive MBA program, or just going back to school pursuing an MBA as a working professional student, something to think about, what would you offer them?
Yeah, good question, Brett. I think one piece of advice would be do it now. I remember when I was starting to think about this and I was getting more and more interested, I thought, you know what? Yeah, that would be neat to do someday. I'll do that someday. I'll apply for business school someday. And the more I started to think about that, the more I realized I need this now. Like I can use this today. The longer I wait, the more time I'll spend not having this knowledge and these skills. So I think a lot of people tend to view it that way. Like, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll do that someday. I think I'd like to do that someday. Even some of my friends that are considering going to business school, I would just say, if you're on the fence, just do it. It's there's no time like the present, right? There's never going to be a good time to devote all these extra hours to school. It's going to be disruptive in any season in life. And of course, there might be some reasons why it isn't a good time for you or your family. I don't mean to discount that, but if you're on the fence and wondering, should I wait or should I do it? I would encourage you just to do it. I'm thankful that I did. I mean, it initially was the thing I thought I would do in a few years, and I'm so thankful I did it now. So that's one piece of advice that I would give.
Billy, I really appreciate that note. It resonates with a lot of the conversations that we've had here on the podcast, and it's advice that's come from other students as well, because I think for many of our students, similar to your path, maybe they thought about this for a while. And then, reflecting on that journey, it's like, I overthought this. I thought about it too much. I should have, I love where I am and I'm doing all this and I'm learning and this is great. But like looking back on this, like, I think I was waiting for too many things to line up, or I was, just waiting for this window where everything, and it's just not realistic. It's not how life works.
Yeah, I think that's very common, and it's normal. I mean, that's natural. That's human nature, and I felt that way for sure. And I'm thankful that, I guess I had the encouragement and the support to just go for it, and I'm so glad I did. I think there's a lot of value in just doing it now. Seizing the day. So yeah. Thanks for asking. That was a good question, and I appreciate you having me on. I really enjoyed it, Brett.
Yeah, Billy, such a pleasure. By the way, Seize the Day, Dead Poets Society reference. I'm a fan of that movie, as I think most English majors are. So nevertheless, managed to work in a movie reference here. So, all right, Billy. Well, so great to see you. So great to catch up with you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story with our listeners. And can't wait to see you at the next residency. And of course, looking forward to the mid-program celebration in June. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, bro. It was really great to spend time with you today. Thanks for having me.
And that was my interview with Billy Petersen, a student in our Executive MBA Class of 2023. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. You can be reached at exec, that's EXEC, MBA at darden.virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.